Okay, so let's go. Yeah, I wanted to speak about stories, people telling stories. I mean, for me, in the theatre, obviously, storytelling is very important. But I was thinking about you. You know, you come along and you watch an event like this, and I was thinking, if I was you, I'd be coming along here probably for a couple of reasons. One, I'd be looking to steal some ideas, for sure. You know, I'd want to pick up on a few vibrant new ideas. I'd also, if it's me, because I'm a bit cruel, I'd be looking to see if people are going to fail up here. You know, are they going to fit in the 15 seconds or not? So hopefully, maybe I'll fail. I think failing is a good thing. It's interesting for us. But this is what I'd like you to steal. Causal narrative. I found out about this about 6 months ago, and it has changed everything I do in the way I work with stories. Because causal narrative does this. It gets people emotionally involved in the story, engaged. And if you know anything about emotions, if we're emotionally involved, we'll do stuff. Emotions equal action. You get people to do things that they would never otherwise do. We often used to think that it was all about fact, but it's not. It's about fantasy. And that's interesting because when you think about it, most of the things we do in our life are based on fantasy. They're not based on fact at all. And yet most of us think they are. And that leaves us open to being exploited quite heavily. And there are a lot of very negative stories around at the moment. And then sometimes we're very unaware of how those stories affect us and why. And that's really what I wanted to speak about over the next, probably about a minute and a half, no, 3.5 minutes left. I'll give you an insight into causal narrative. If you understand it, I think you will be able to see through negative stories when they're around. And you yourselves, if you understand it, might want to actually start using it to create very positive, very powerful stories for yourselves. All right, so let me put my neck on the line. This is, I would say, a chronological narrative. The king died, the queen died. They are two facts. We can prove them, but it's not very interesting. But if I said to you, the king died and the queen died of guilt, yeah, exactly. What do you start thinking about? You start thinking about, whoa, what was going on there then? And that guilt is a disconnect to death. It's what we would call a charismatic idea. It unlocks our fantasy and we start going, well, what was going on there in the court? What was that queen up to? Was she having an affair with a courtier? Was that king a bastard and she had to kill him? And we start to engage. But it's not a fact. It's just fantasy. It's pure supposition and we get involved in it emotionally. So how does this work in our real lives? Well, yeah, I've got a few examples here. Some are a little bit not so great. Brexit. Let's look at that. 3 weeks before the vote, Leave campaign was losing. So they decided they should do something. So they invented a great story. They had two facts. The UK is in the EU, that's a fact, and it doesn't have a sovereign control over its borders, that's a fact. And then they introduced a lovely causal narrative, a charismatic idea. Because of that, we will be overrun. There is that picture. We will be overrun by migrants coming from everywhere. We will lose our houses to migrants. We will lose our jobs to migrants. A very powerful image, such a powerful image, that image pops up a couple of years later in another campaign. Exactly the same guy in the grey hoodie, and similar lines. We will be overrun. But we don't know, it's not really a fact, it's fantasy, but it motivated a lot of people. This person, I feel, used causal narrative very, very positively, Martin Luther King. I have a dream, he said. And that's interesting because he actually says the word dream. He lets everybody know this is not real, this is fantasy. Had two facts. There was the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, and there was the fact of segregation. And he introduced into that a wonderful charismatic idea of equality. And if we have equality, then this wonderful dream might happen. But it was a dream that he used the word I in front of. I have a dream, not we will be overrun. And I think this word I is very, very important. Because when we use we, what we start to do is we start to include other people as bit players in our narrative. And I took a section of his text, I don't expect you to read it, but look at all those things in yellow. That's how much he had I in his speech. I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream, only one we. He knew very well. He didn't want to brainwash people. He wanted to leave you open. This is my dream. This is what I think it will look like. You decide if you want to join me in it. So when you hear stories around you and they use that word we, be very, very skeptical. When you hear stories with a negative charismatic idea in it, be very, very skeptical. Positive and I is nice and transparent. And that's the power of causal narrative. So if you understood anything from this, next time you speak, don't speak about facts. Put a little fantasy in between. Thank you very much.